thanks for coming, and it's great to have our Lighthouse colleagues hosting an event here. So, as Sian rightly said, I'm Digital Media Manager for Southwold Park. I run a department here called Digital Media Centre. I'm also Programme Manager for SHP Live, which is our new streaming initiative from Southwold Park. For the latter half of the week, I also work at The Place, which is a contemporary dance venue in London, where I'm their digital coordinator, so I get around quite a bit. Is my contact details on here, so if you've got any questions or anything that you want to pose after my talk, I find Twitter is really effective, so you can get hold of me on Martin_Franklin on Twitter, or straight ahead email martin@digitalmediacentre.org.uk. So, as I mentioned, I'm primarily going to talk about SHP Live here today. It's a new project, and we're just really starting to deliver our first live streamed projects in that programme. But before I talk about that, I want to just give you a little bit of context for that, which will kind of help demonstrate my thinking and how I got to this stage to put in the proposal to Arts Council to launch SHP Live. So we're going to go back in time a little bit first to 2006, when I launched the Digital Media Centre at Southwold Park. So it was then, I think it probably still is, one of the very few dedicated digital departments embedded in a kind of theatre-based venue. We run all sorts of things in that department. I quite like the making and hands-on approach, so we do a lot of stuff with electronics and sensors and getting people to sort of get their hands on technology. So this photograph here is from a motion sensor workshop we did with Nick Sanderland, where he hooked up a piece of software called Isadora so that performers could trigger sound and video through motion. One of the things that's really characterised my programme here, I was sort of looking back to put together my slides, I found that it was partnership working, which has really been a consistent theme in some of the work that I've done and some of the stuff that I'm most proud of. Back in 2007, we did our first Sonic Arts conference called Soundspace. I worked with Sonic Arts Network, who now are merged into the Sound and Music organisation. But we hosted the first major commission by Yannick Schaefer in our gallery, and held a sound art conference right here. We then evolved that theme over the next couple of years. In 2008, we worked with the Touch label, which produces all sorts of events and recordings. And brought over an artist called Jana Windren from Norway, who was one of their artists, and she spoke at the event, which was sort of themed on the idea of artists working with location recordings and field recording. For the last event, which was in 2010, I partnered with Oxford Brookes University. Their event here was based on the idea of artist communities and online communities connected with sound and sound-related artists. So for that event, we brought over an artist called Patrick McGinley, who lives in Estonia, and he produces a radio show called Framework, which is dedicated to field recording and is a real hub for an online community at that time. While Patrick was here, I actually engaged him to do a weekend workshop as part of my programme, and the result of that weekend workshop is that we got 4 one-hour radio programmes that went out on Resonance FM. So I'm smiling because Jane Pink is just here, who's one of the artists, which is a happy coincidence. Okay. Another great partnership, which I've just discovered quite recently, is working with a game engine developer called Unity Technology. And what partnering with them has allowed me to do is basically have their consultant trainer for a week free. So last summer he worked with 10 young people in our media lab to introduce them to the Unity engine, and they all ended that week having made a game from scratch, which they then shared on some game websites, and that gave them all amazing insight and sort of access to a professional in the game industry. For a few years, I was producing a screen dance collection, and I partnered with Oxford Dance Festival for the last year of that. And what that led to was screening of the collection of work that I put together as part of the dance festival, where it was projected onto the wall of Oxford Castle. So we had 400 people come out on a cold February evening to watch these massive projected images in the courtyard of Oxford Castle. Really incredible event. And then I began to talk more with Oxford Dance Festival, and we evolved this idea of location-based dance into an app project, which I delivered and managed for them. It's a location trail where the GPS sensor in your phone guides you around the city, and then when you arrive at certain points in the city, you view a site-specific dance piece that was filmed at that exact point. So really interesting and engaging project. So all of these partnership projects have enabled me to do things that were far bigger than I could do on my own, and reach far more people than I could if I was just stuck in my building, just doing things right here. And when I look back on the thinking behind all of that stuff, it seems very much like the kind of thinking that we now associate with digital. It's about partnership, and it's about sharing, and it's about reaching people. So yeah, just stepping outside of the venue has enabled me to achieve that. Okay. One of the things that I really like doing is talking to people and talking to artists and talking about ideas. So throughout my work in the digital media department, I've used the opportunity to talk to artists, and I've recorded those conversations and released them on a podcast. So the very definition of a podcast involves two bits of technology. There's your MP3 audio file, but then there's an RSS document, which is basically a list of your content. And the big win with podcasts is that it's driven by subscription. So at whatever point your audience discover you, they can subscribe to your feed, and they'll see all of your past episodes, but they'll also be alerted to all of your future episodes. So it's a tremendous way to grow an audience. So I've used the content that we generate in the building, the interesting people that come through our door, to record some conversations that go out on this podcast. We produced a few more shows for Resonance FM, and that then kind of made me think, actually, radio, that's a great thing, you know. I'm producing this stuff anyway, so why don't I try to place it on the radio? So I managed to get a partnership with another community station called Sound Art Radio. A big number just descended there, which I'll tell you about in a second. So my podcast then translated into a weekly radio show on Sound Art Radio. I had a certain unknown group of analogue listeners, very hard to get stats from radio listeners, but I can keep track of my podcast stats. For 1 year, I ended up having 35,000 downloads of my podcast episodes. And for years and years, I think, before people were terribly familiar with the idea of statistics, people in our industry would just blow off that figure and just go, well, they downloaded it, but you don't know they listened to it, which seems ludicrous now. That's 35,000 real people really engaging with this content. No matter how you dice that number, it's still really satisfying. It could be, you could take it down to one person who's listened 35,000 times if you want to. Even people listening twice, people listening 3 times, 10 times, that's still a great number of listeners to have. So going through all of this process, it's led me to think about operating in an arts venue as being a cultural broadcaster, putting events on here, but actually thinking about that in a digital way as content. It's great, unique stuff that we produce. We can then broadcast that in different ways. So it's from this podcast thinking that I then thought live streaming, become a broadcaster visually as well as sonically. So that led us to put in our application to Arts Council England. We were successful, and we now have a 3-year programme to, I always want to sort of say to go boldly, or whatever the Star Trek line is, to boldly go. But it's to research and develop. What can we do with live streaming? One of the things which I think characterises what we do in SHP Live is our interest in the primary questions. Why are we doing this, and what is it that we're doing? Live streaming it's not cheap to do, and so I think there's an awful lot of mileage to be had in developing it to its full potential, which may involve things other than pointing cameras at stage productions that already exist. There's a whole world of interactivity and engagement that we can lever through delivering online. I've got a couple of examples of some of our most recent projects that I'll show you. So in December, we always have a Christmas show in our theatre. Has fantastic design and beautiful sets. It's very traditional pantomime. This year we did Jack and the Beanstalk. So we wanted to think, what else could we do with this idea of streaming a pantomime? So we targeted children's wards of hospitals, hospices, respite care homes, and special educational needs schools. So we wanted to reach an audience who just plain weren't going to come into our theatre because they're too sick to do so. And we could actually use the power of our content to give them something to smile about at Christmas, work with the health organisations to become screening partners. So we got quite a lot of buy-in from them, although we were asking them to do something sort of new and strange and very technically challenging for them. But nevertheless, we did some trials, got it to work, and we had a dozen screening partners, which amounted to an audience of about 300 children watching one performance of the pantomime online. As part of our process in doing this, we really wanted to make them feel like they were a genuine audience, and that they were acknowledged as an audience. So we sent them copies of the programme. We sent them little goodie packs, so they had the glow sticks and fairy wings and the whole kind of panto stuff. In terms of the production that was streamed, we recorded some pre-roll, some VT stuff that we could inject into the live stream that only the online audience would see. So that, in the first instance, was a greeting by the pantomime dame that welcomes them to the show, asks them to engage and do all the kind of usual panto interaction. So I thought you might like to have a look at that.
Well, Percy, you shouldn't have eaten so many chips. Oh, hello everybody, how are you? Welcome to my farm. I'm Old Ma Donald, but you can call me Auntie Dolly, and I live here on the farm with my son Jack and lots of animals. This is Percy. He's not feeling very well today, are you, Percy? So I'm just giving him some hugs to make him feel a bit better. Now, the thing is, we're performing Jack and the Beanstalk at Southhill Park this Christmas, and it would be lovely if you could join us, only I hear that you're not able to do that. But do you know what we're going to do instead? Those nice people at Southhill Park have arranged for us to come to you in your beds. Well, not in your beds, that would be silly, but next to your beds on a screen, you see, so you can join in all our adventures. Now, Those of you who've been to a pantomime before will know it's all about shouting out and joining in and singing the songs and booing the baddie. And just because I can't see you doesn't mean to say I don't know what you're up to, because I've got eyes everywhere. So you will join in, won't you? Oh, good. It'll be so much fun. Absolutely marvellous.
Old Madonna to the stage, please. The show is about to begin.
Excuse me, they're calling me to the stage. Have a nice time, everybody, and I'll see you later. Say bye-bye, Percy. Ta-ta. Bye-bye.
Okay, so after that introduction, then we cut to the show. We had an amazing response from our screening partners to this. There's some absolutely priceless quotes of children who've never been to a pantomime before having their first experience of live entertainment, live theatre through us streaming into their hospital wards. Next project which we produced here was Beyond the Stage. Now this was another conference event, but going along with our interests in these primary questions about why and what are we doing, we wanted Beyond the Stage to be about the creative possibilities of live streaming. So our emphasis was on talk and creativity, not letting those technical obstacles get in the way at that stage. We wanted to actually develop ideas about what exciting thing could we do before we started to talk about the tech end of things. One of the speakers at Beyond the Stage was Marcus Roma from Pilot Theatre. We will hear from one of his colleagues a little bit later on. Actually, the talk that Marcus gave is now the latest episode on the Gene Pool podcast, so I'm still sort of recycling all of that stuff and making it work as hard as it possibly can. We also had John Darvell from Nocturne Dance, who had just delivered the first stage of a really interesting project which tried to leave a viral promotion campaign on Twitter that actually enticed an audience to engage with characters, who then led them to view a stream of a mysterious space where this performance was going on. So his idea was not to say the contemporary dance word, because certain people will say, well, I don't like contemporary dance, I'm not going to watch it. So he made quite an interesting project around drawing people to see it first and then judge it afterwards, basically. So our aim for Beyond the Stage was that it would seed a network of collaborators and a network of conversation that could continue in the region. We're going to continue Beyond the Stage in later years, so hopefully you may hear about it another time. So, at the moment, our latest live stream project is a series of improvised music concerts called Embedded. And the idea behind this is that the UK is really known for producing experimental and improvised music. We've got the best improvisers in the world. Unfortunately, they can't make a living in the UK. They have to go overseas to actually be paid properly, just because the live music environment here doesn't really support them fully. So we're using that to actually produce a stream that addresses that global audience. We've partnered with The Wire magazine on this, and we're giving The Wire the video that we record of the stream. So they're hosting it for 1 month afterwards, so we're getting an extra bit of mileage out of what we produce for the live stream. It's also going to be given to a really specific audience via The Wire, which is Europe's biggest contemporary music magazine, so they really are very useful to actually add a bit of value to what we're doing in this respect. So, audiences. I'm not going to talk too much about stats, but we're starting to gather lots of really useful information about audience behaviour. It's not why I'm not going to tell you about it, it's very sort of long-winded conversation. But the big things that we're noticing from our stats is that our engagement with our audience is now different. It's no longer restricted just to the time that the performance is on. It's no longer buy a ticket, sit on that seat at 8 o'clock, 10:30, you're gone. We've got this triangular pattern of engagement with the audience which is arriving. So you can see the big spike in the middle here. That's from our embedded concert last Saturday with Jonathan Cole-Clough and John Butcher. That's 350 page loads during the concert, which then tails off to the next few days. But we had over 100 people the next day still clicking on our Watch Now page. So that kind of told me a couple of things, that the watch again culture has really spread quickly. The whole sort of television, watch it whenever you want, replay idea, that's almost now an expectation. People are excited by the idea that your event was streamed live at the time, but it might not be convenient for them to watch it at that moment, so they want to use it like they use TV, to watch it the next day, watch it whenever they want to. The technology that enables that is a little bit more complex, so for us at this point we don't have a watch again service, but we will do it at some stage. In the meantime, we just you can just put your videos up online, but I think there's a few questions about, do you want to give it all away after that? So I'm just sort of treading carefully on that, but this instance here of triangular audience engagement seems very interesting. Okay, so what's coming up for SHP Live? We've drawn a few themes from our Beyond the Stage conference that the audience were particularly interested in hearing more about and hearing in a bit more detail about. So we've got a series of masterclasses we're calling Mindstorms. So they'll be in the format of a presentation and then an opportunity for participants to actually work on developing their own ideas and implementing the particular specialism of the tutor for their own projects. First up, we've got a writer called David Varela, who specialises in transmedia and multi-platform projects. So out of our conference, this seemed to be a really fruitful idea because it's actually addressing the real sort of root of what is it that you're going to produce and how can you lever digital platforms in the best and most engaging way. So David produced a project called The Seed, which was part of the Cultural Olympiad. He's also produced an app called Zombies Run. So if you're a jogger, you can get the Zombies Run app. It's location sensitive. It tells you a story. You can run and participate in your very own zombie apocalypse movie. Really fantastic, imaginative way to engage with people. The next Mindstorms will be me talking to you about all the nuts and bolts of how do you technically stream something, and I'll be covering the whole price range of streaming something for nothing and streaming something for £30,000 if you happen to be a bit cash rich at the moment. The final one, we've got the web analyst from Tate, Elena Villaspesa, who's going to be talking us through analysing your stats, actually working out what do people do when they come onto your website and watch your live stream. That's going to be super valuable because you need to really know what the way your audiences are behaving. And that's going to inform our practice going forward. We're then working with Nocturne Dance once again to develop the second stage of their Dare You Watch project. So that will be produced here, performed here, delivered through their website, dareyouwatch.com. There's a URL that's gold dust if ever there was one. You can resist going to Dare You Watch. So those are our coming up things in the spring. We're trying to establish ourselves as a resource in the region, so we're here, we're delivering things, we're bringing interesting people into the southeast region, and we love partnership working, and we love talking to people about things that we can help with. So if any of this is of interest to you, then get in touch. We're here. We're going to be here for the next three years, live streaming projects. You can chat to us on Twitter, SHP Live, or go and take a look at shplive.tv to see what's coming up and some of the things that we have done. So that's me. Thank you very much.
I forgot to mention earlier that if anyone is trying to hop online, there's the wireless network is called Romeo, and the password is wireless. So you can tweet, and tweeting for today's seminar is #streamout. So please get onto that. So if anyone's got any questions for Martin, we've got 5 minutes sort of after each speaker to take questions. So fire away.
How did the hospitals facilitate showing?
It was a bit of a mixture, but generally it was a matter of finding the right person to help us. So the way they did it was they have TV rooms in their institution, so most of the time they hooked up a laptop to their TV, so they had a mini audience experience of the other children in the room. There was a couple who had to bring in their sort of IT guy to fix the network so it could receive the stream, but generally that was the approach they took.
You discovered quite a lot of things about hospitals and wireless connections, didn't you? And that's the kind of, which I'm sure you're just about to tell us, but anyone else in the room who's thinking about live streaming out to other places or other sorts of venues from somewhere like Southfield Park?
Yeah.
It's not quite as simple as just turning something on and putting a screen up, is it?
Not always, no. I mean, the way we... I think you have to assist any screening partner that you're working with. So we did tests, and we were delivering our stream encoded as Flash. So there's issues about, do they have the Flash plugin installed? Which browser do they have? Which browser works best? What kind of computer they're using? What kind of bandwidth they've got? So we did some actual practical tests, which was tremendously reassuring for our partners. So they could go into the day knowing that they'd done it before and that it did work. And that sort of level of reassurance, I think, comes with the territory. If you're working with people who have variable technical expertise, then you've got to help them. You've got to help them.
And you were making kind of, I think we all assume that everyone's got a great internet connection,
yeah.
don't we? And you found that wasn't the case in hospitals either.
Absolutely, yeah. To a worrying degree. We did have one hospital who declined to receive the stream because they just didn't have enough bandwidth, and they said vital medical services may be compromised if somebody watches a video in the hospital, so we could kill someone. So we didn't really want to sort of push it there. But yeah, it's frightening. So all the talk you might hear about investment in IT infrastructure for health services, not happening everywhere for sure.
You briefly mentioned using motion sensors.
Oh yeah.
Performers. Can you tell me a bit more about that? You build the motion sensors and everything.
Yeah, that sort of activity is part of our kind of regular digital program, and it was real sort of hands-on stuff using a little microcontroller called an Arduino to bridge between a motion sensor, like you might find in a something in your house, like an alarm sensor, and then that just hooks into your computer and it can trigger whatever you program it to do. Yeah, really interesting. I did a week following that, which was a project that was supported by Southeast Dance for dance performers to kind of work with technology in a performance context. It's really interesting. Yes.
Hi. So it sounds like you successfully streamed your content to a large part of your audience.
Yeah.
Is sort of 3 or 5 years from now, what sort of plan would you put in place to make it sustainable? Would you attach advertising revenue? Would you sell it?
I knew someone would ask that. It's very difficult. It is very difficult because We're thinking now in a sort of midterm about how do we monetize that stream. And at the moment, the thinking is that it's audience development, and it's about reach, and it's about sort of adding numbers, and actually bringing people into the experience of what we do. I'm always very mindful that within the arts industry, we all know what is it like to go to see a live show, to go to a concert, or so forth. We all know why that's great, but actually, it's probably 90% of the world who've never been to a live culture experience. They've never been to a gallery or anything. And so I think this is a way to actually connect with them. So the long-term win is that our audience could enormously grow because we can give them a taste of what is it like. To answer your question a little bit more practically, I don't know, but I'm supposing that the market for paid live streaming may develop like it has for music downloads, where if we can make it simple enough for people to pay their money and get a kind of instant experience, then they will do that. And what that price point is, I think there's a number of people now who are exploring that. Digital theatre are doing some very interesting stuff with different qualities of downloaded movie and putting them at different price points.
Would you say that having your end user paying is probably the most or the first approach you try, rather than attaching people who will benefit from the size of the audience, like advertisers?
I think all of this is up for R&D, really. I mean, we're looking at attracting a sponsor for our next Christmas show, who will sort of underwrite the delivery cost of it. But I think either way, something that's not... I think those income streams have to be part of it for future. We can't sort of constantly think of funding support, paying for everything, because we may not be able to.
Thank you, Martin. There'll be opportunities during the break
Yes.
and afterwards for any further questions.
Any
Oh, was there? Did I miss somebody? Sorry.
Sorry, I was just interested in your notion of triangular audience engagement.
Oh, yeah.
Can you just summarise that for me again?
I think it's just my observation on the shape of our statistics, really, where we're seeing a sort of early response as we ramp up our promotion about it, and then that spike. But actually, it's the tail which is really interesting, and the number of people who are coming back to try to engage again, who are clicking that Watch Now button again. We do a lot of stuff with social media, so we are literally having conversations with our audience after the event. We're putting up other bits of media that people can respond to, other photographs. Sometimes we get people who actually tweet or send us photographs of their viewing experience. So they photograph their living room and what they were seeing. So there's a really nice kind of tail off there, which I think it's helpful in that it lets us get to know our audience over a longer period. It lets them come back to us. So does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.